Welcome to this episode of It's Not You, but Sometimes It Is. I had the awesome pleasure of talking with Bridgette Ferraro. She's the CEO of iCopyLegal and a growth strategist in lots of different settings throughout her career. We had a really fun conversation about the nature of growth and change and its impact on people and all the hard lessons she's learned in developing her own self-awareness around her pace and how important pace is when you are leading a team through growth and change. So I know you're going to really enjoy and appreciate the conversation. Welcome aboard. Welcome, friends, to this episode of It's Not You, but Sometimes It Is, where I get to have super fun conversations with real leaders about the real crap they face, folks in C-suite roles. And I'm so excited today to have Bridgette Ferraro here. So Bridgette, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thanks for having me, Meg.
And Bridgette, you have a long career in very senior leadership roles, primarily as a growth strategist, but in a bunch of different settings. You had a very interesting kind of career trajectory. You're currently in Colorado, right? Fort Collins.
Yep.
Yes, so we're all jealous of that. So can you give us a little bit, like a quick backdrop of the arc of your career and how you ended up in these current C-suite role you're in and what your company does?
Yeah. So my degree originally was in early childhood. I wanted to be a child life specialist and work in the hospitals. And I took a course on nonprofit management, which was really a catalyst for me learning how organizations were built. It was taught by an adjunct professor, Bill Stange, which I said that wrong, Bill. You're amazing. He actually, I think, only taught twice. And you learn how to do mission, vision, build a board, build a budget. And all the basics of that really apply to for profit as well. And so I really went from nonprofit, for profit, nonprofit, for profit. And I was helping grow a nonprofit that was throwing parties for kids that were critically and chronically ill. So it was really that happy marriage between the nonprofit marriage or the nonprofit industry and also where I thought I wanted to be with being a child life specialist. And I had a girlfriend that I'd met through the nonprofit circle in Chicago that had received sweat equity for business development in a records retrieval company and had no idea about the legal industry or insurance industry or even technology. And they were building a tech platform. And she was explaining how she was bringing in business, but operationally, they just weren't prepared to scale. Really, kind of just a ladies' vent session. And I was like, give me 3 months. I'll solve 80% of these problems. And at the end of the 3 months, they made me a sweat equity offer and CEO that I didn't feel like I could pass up. I just saw the opportunity that the business had. It had been around for about 11 years at that point. And I've been doing it now for 7 years.
Awesome. Awesome. So, you know, a lot of people that I talk to, we all have kind of a similar narrative where we get tapped on the shoulder for something, right? Where we never quite see the path that we're going to take, but we get really skillful and talented at certain things, right? And I think when you're in a senior leadership role with an eye on business, you can end up almost anywhere. And if you're just good at solving problems and forecasting the future, right? So it's an interesting story, but not totally unusual for those of us who are in those kind of C-suite roles in small to medium-sized businesses. It's like a windy path we take.
Yeah, it's
So
been amazing.
yeah, yeah. So you've been in a lot of different settings, right? Nonprofit and for-profit, with lots of different kinds of services products. So, and I always have loved the business side of things and strategizing and growth. That's always the exciting part, right? And then there's just these weird, unexpected difficulties that come up, especially on the people side of things. So do you have any examples of that where there was some unexpected friction, drama, lack of accountability, just something that happened with the people where you were trying to grow and you got unexpectedly slowed down? What, tell us kind of what the situation was. How did you overcome it?
Yeah, and I think that for me in general, I tend to be very fast paced, high velocity. And so understanding that as a leader, when you're going through hyper growth, um, not everybody is built for change at the pace and rate that I am. And so I
Mhm.
think more than anything, something I've learned over time and in a lot of my positions is that I have to slow down to speed up. There's instances where I've maybe felt the friction or the pain because I don't like to slow down. I like to
Mhm.
go fast, but I've learned where I can be kind of my own enemy, for lack of a better term, if I'm not making sure that everybody around me who's either sitting at the table or on the team um, has buy-in to where we're going and at what rate,
Mhm.
and making sure that it's really well communicated and that people are really well set up for success. Um, One big thing when you're going through hyper growth as an organization is a lot of times people will get promoted really quickly because the company is growing and they're the
Mhm.
people who are there right in front of you and they know how to do the job. But I've learned and I think have sharpened my skill as a leader to figure out how to know where people's strengths are and actually not move them too quickly through growth cycles
Mhm.
so that they're set up for the best success and really having those cultural conversations that
Mhm.
you might be used to a certain path of promotion and moving through roles quickly at this organization, but we're going to slow that down and we're going to do that intentionally. That doesn't mean that you're not promotable, that we don't want to continue to see you grow, but we want you to be set up for success. And there is a point where time and knowledge, some of those soft skills and leadership things really do have to catch up with you.
Mhm.
And you need mentorship and you need
Mhm.
time before you can kind of jump into other positions.
Yeah, yeah. So that kind of reminds me of the difference between knowledge and skill. You can learn a lot, but to actually be skillful in a leadership role, you have to have time to apply that knowledge and just experiment and make little mistakes and have those little growing pains. And people need that time. It's like maturing as a leader, and having the awareness that you had to say, I've got growth areas, potentially blind spots. I'm going to be my own worst enemy here if I don't manage this little intensity better, right? And I'm also a gas pedal person, right? I'm never satisfied unless it's 1,000 miles an hour. And so I know I need to be uncomfortable with how slow we're going because I'm making everyone else uncomfortable with how fast I want to go. So it's kind of finding that healthy balance of we're all a little uncomfortable, but we're balancing each other out. We're listening to each other. We're treading intentionally together. And we're able to talk and communicate and support each other because it's not usually what we're doing, it's how we do it. Right. And that's one of the biggest leadership lessons for me. It's not, it wasn't the vision, it wasn't the goals, it wasn't the work. It was how fast or how supported or unsupported people felt.
Mhm. Well, and sometimes making sure that if you don't have that built in, that you make the time and go find the resources to bring an outsourced solution. Even for myself, right? I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I've never run a company the size of the company that I'm
Yep.
running today, and
Yep.
I will have never run the size company that I will be running a year from now when it's grown even more. So,
Yeah.
making sure that it's not just for my team, but also the self awareness
Mm-hmm.
for myself.
And I've had so many coaches and mentors, and in different areas. It's like what I need to develop that in that time frame or that period, right? And you have to know yourself well enough to know where do I really need to stretch myself this year and focus on this year to make the biggest impact on the company and the
Yeah.
team. Yeah. And man, those are some humbling reflection sessions sometimes.
Here's my list of all the things I need to improve. Yes.
Luckily, people have always been pretty generous in giving me feedback about where my growth areas are, which is what we need to get that
Yep.
awareness, right? So I know that you have focused on culture. Obviously, you're attuned to people and what they need. And I was not as attuned, Bridget. I have made every mistake you can make when it comes to culture and people at the expense of growth. But they say that culture eats strategy for breakfast. I had these big visions and all these places I want to go. And I wasn't paying enough attention to the culture and the actual interactions and habits and attitudes that were pervasive around me because I didn't think it mattered that much. And then you realize that matters more than anything else. Do you have any examples of this? Like, I'm assuming you've had to have a couple wake up calls like I did of going, whoops, pay more attention here. Do you have any examples of that, like the little cultural red flags that caught your attention that you needed to address?
Yeah, I when I ran a nonprofit, there is interesting dynamics that can happen in a nonprofit space, especially at a leadership level, that are a little bit different depending upon what kind of for-profit, right? So whether the for-profit has a board or if they're private versus,
Yeah.
held with private equity, or even if they're public, right? The structure around the leadership layers highly can contribute to culture and the things you have to be mindful of. Being able to allow to perpetuate through all the different layers of culture. So on the nonprofit side, I had a board, which is completely volunteer, but they really do function as the level of like leadership or supervision over the leadership of the nonprofit. And so it was interesting getting a couple years in and also walking into an existing organization where there was already a culture with the board. And so there's a difference between the opportunity of starting culture and then passing off the culture baton, or walking into existing culture and trying to create a culture shift. And so I think that was not my first, but it was a really different type of dynamic of trying
Mhm.
to learn how to change culture. And I didn't know what I didn't know, right? I'm just like figuring it out as I go. I knew there were some things that I needed and wanted to change, but didn't necessarily know how to best navigate through it. And so as I went through that process, at the end of the day, when I went to leave, I think we moved the needle in some really, really great ways of changing culture. Um, and then there were some other things that it was just hitting your head against a brick wall a little bit of like, I'm not the one. I'm not the one that's going to be successful on this one. But still making a lot of great progress.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes, depending on a way a company or organization is structured and set up and the market and the services, it's can feel like a losing battle. There are certainly some organizations doing work in a harder sphere than others. And I've definitely had that experience as well, going back and forth between for-profit and nonprofit. And growing, evolving, changing a nonprofit organization is so much harder. I mean, I had board members that said, now that we actually understand the constraints that you're working in, we realize none of us could do what you're doing. This is incredibly difficult because of the constraints. And we're expected to do so much more with so much less. And quite honestly, money covers incompetence, and we don't have the money. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I just think there's some really unique dynamics in the nonprofit world, especially when it comes to culture and talent. If you know that you're not paying market for people at the skill level they're at. I'm wondering what kind of, what are your lessons there from the nonprofit sector or comparisons of hiring high skilled people, especially into leadership roles, nonprofit versus for profit? What have been the differences there for you?
Yeah, I think it's been a lesson I've learned time and time again at a certain inflection point of it being worth paying for a high skilled person,
Mhm.
whereas my inclination is to not. My inclination is most things can be learned and taught, and you want to focus on personality and culture and emotional intelligence when you're looking for a really great candidate for wherever I've been. And then with the thought and intention to invest in them and that they will scale and grow as needed. But the reality is, there's been some points where I've learned the lesson that while that can seem really well intentioned, that can be exactly what puts someone in a really tricky spot where
Yep.
they're over their skis a little bit,
Yep.
and that's on me, right? That's me making a decision, and maybe not always intentionally, but maybe not realizing how quickly we're going to grow in the near term. So
Right.
making a decision thinking we had more time to get
Mhm.
there, and then we don't. So I think I've learned to maybe again slow down to speed up to really analyze where are we going to be, not just 6 months or a year from now, but even potentially 2 years from now, and what will a person of this skill set need to be successful,
Mhm.
because I am so high velocity and move so quickly. Short term, is sometimes like weeks and months, not in a matter of like, 18 months or 2 years can be short term for some people when they're thinking strategically in business planning.
Right.
So I would say that's a big one. And I continue to make sure that I tweak on the same lesson.
Yeah, it's the hire slow, fire fast. I would find I was doing these like fingers crossed hires. Like you're probably gonna make it. You've got high EQ. Like I'll coach you as much as I can, and you've got grit. You'll figure it out. But we shouldn't do those fingers crossed hires. Like, well, we're the ones who actually understand the demands and constraints of this role, and that person doesn't. And so it's our responsibility to make sure that we're being really thorough about setting someone up for success. And I've made that mistake. And that's on us, like you said.
Yep.
That's a hard one. Along those veins of hard lessons, I realized that a lot of my evolution and trying to develop myself as a leader was based on what I didn't like and didn't want, the kind of bad leadership I had experienced. And I didn't honestly have a whole lot of models of great leadership. I had some great traits that I would pick out, and then I would try and avoid what I had experienced. And so I think some of us learn how to lead by bad bosses that we've had in the past, bad leadership. And so I'm wondering, are there any examples of that for you where you went, I don't want to be like that? And how have you shifted and been intentional in your leadership? And also, do you think bad bosses are fixable?
Oh, man. Well, I would say that I think the number one bad boss that I point to is myself. I say all the time, like the buck stops with me at the end of the day with the organization. But also, while I love people and I love culture, I'm actually not a great people person. And I would love to think, yes, I can be fixed. I can learn. You can teach an old dog new tricks. While I have some terrible habits, the core of it being that what I want and need to thrive in my position, in my role, and what feels good to me, is not what everyone needs. And frankly, it's not what most people need. I am a
Mm-hmm.
little bit of a unicorn in
Yep.
how I operate
Yep.
and what does feel good to me from like a supervisor or authority perspective
Mm-hmm.
is actually not what most people need. And I think that took me a really long time to learn because I am a very much like, I want you to have a lot of autonomy. But I've also gotten into habits, which are not great. If you've ever heard of a seagull CEO, where you like, you fly up here,
Yeah.
okay,
Mhm.
50,000 feet, and then like something happens, the storm rolls in, seagull gets super stressed out, and you fly down and you steal their French fries, and then you go back and you're gone. And they're like, what just happened to my lunch? Okay. Um, and I like that depiction is me. And I try really hard to be mindful of, okay, like I feel the storm coming and I really want to dive down and get some
Mhm.
French fries because I'm afraid I need to like take it back to my nest. And so putting layers in place, right? So, okay, let's think about like, I don't know, a tiered auditorium area. And there's different people in the organization sitting at the chairs with their French fries. And I can go down like one or two layers and get some French fries. But like, if I dive too deep, I'm just causing chaos everywhere,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So I also recognize that I am a verbal processor. Shocking. We're so surprised. um, and so if I'm like going through something with someone, problem solving, I am not the best documenter. So that like afterward, here's a follow up, here's the bullet points, here's what we talked about. And so just putting some things in place around where
Mhm.
my strengths and weaknesses are.
Yeah.
And then putting really great people in place
Mhm.
around me
Yeah.
who are the yang to my yang a bit.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that the biggest thing I learned from previous kind of bad bosses, I had some roles where at a very kind of young age in my career, integrity was in question. Essentially, like there was some stuff going down that just like didn't wasn't necessarily in line with like the cultures and values of the organization, which I took very seriously and
Mhm.
adopted very seriously. And so just making sure that throughout the process, and I'm human, I'm not perfect, I don't always get it right, but making sure that um, I'm really doing what I say I'm going to do. And if things change or pivot, making sure that I'm communicating proactively as much as possible with all of those that need to be communicated with.
Yeah. Yeah. I can tell just by your language that you've had to learn slow and the hard way through this stuff and gain a lot of deep self-awareness, but you're really aware. And that's
Ugh, it's
that's
the first step.
80%.
I need like the next 5 steps too to continue moving on through the progress loop. But at least step one, we're making progress.
That's 80% is being deeply aware of your, intensities and unique. So, but the thing is also, Bridget, there are things about ourselves that are not going to change. And it's not many things, right? We can change and evolve. We are constantly changing and evolving, but there are a few cognitive set personality traits that you just need to manage because they're not going to change. And one of those is how oriented you are to people versus the goals and the vision. And we're wired like people are either one or the other. And
Yeah.
so I know that I'm the vision goal oriented person. And so I would hire people around me that were more attuned to the people side of things, and how things were being executed. And you hire to your deficits, but you still need to manage yourself and know to rely on them and shut up and slow down. Right.
Sit back and be quiet. I literally
Yeah.
just had a leadership thing last week, and there were times where I was like, I had my little corner, and I was like, I'm really gonna not talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, just
I had little tricks to make myself not talk where I would hold my hand under the table and be like, it's okay, Meg.
yeah,
You're not going to forget that. Just hold your hand there to remind yourself that you can say that if no one else brings it up. And I would
yep,
just shut up. Someone else brought it up every time. I
yep.
don't
I
need to jump in there.
make notes. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So it sounds like we may be wired similarly. Um, and, it's also that self-awareness is the core of emotional intelligence. And research has shown over and over that the only significant predictor of your success in a leadership role is your level of emotional intelligence. And yet, we're hiring people into leadership roles without being clear about where their EQ is and their social skills. We're not explicitly developing it very much in ourselves and others. And it's the number one predictor of success. So I just think, we're not valuing it enough. We're not paying attention enough often. Many companies are. And so I am wondering if you have seen kind of low EQ, low social emotional functioning affect a team or business results around you. And also, how have you worked on your own emotional intelligence? Because I can tell that you have quite a bit.
Yeah. Okay. So noticing low EQ. Yeah, I think that there have been multiple times throughout my career where I've seen leaders either above me or within my team
Mhm.
that needed to work on some soft skills. And so throughout those experiences, being able to provide an opportunity for them to gain soft skills and intentionally put some resources in place. So I think a really good example actually within iCopy, we just ran an 8-week cohort with a chief people officer that we brought in, and we went through a multitude of different topics, but being able to talk about conflict resolution, what it means to look and be curious within an organization. We're like 96 percent remote. And so
Mhm.
we're a pretty lean team
Mhm.
with and we have a global team, so we have like an international component as well as our stateside component. And even stateside, I think we're spread out across 12 different states. We're
Mhm.
constantly like chat
Mhm.
communicating and email communicating. We do have FaceTime, but that's the minority, not the majority. And so just realizing, hey, we need a bit of like a level reset of our tools in our toolbox to make sure
Mhm.
that we are being mindful of what communication can look like, and to really be curious and make sure that we're being people. Our whole tagline as a company is people first, tech forward. So we're a service based company that is providing really really great customer service. And so I'm always speaking from the point of, we want to come from a place of abundance. If we're not doing that well internally, we're not going to be able to do that well coming from a place of abundance to our clients.
Mhm.
Um, and peopling externally, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's an interesting too, being in the services and knowing that your services are the crux of your success as a company. People have to have people skills for that. And yet you're all spread out all over the place. So you have to be more intentional because much of relationship building and communication is nonverbal. And if you're just getting chats and emails, it's hard to develop trust and sustain trust. And obviously, your folks, by and large, are going to be able to do that because of the roles that they're in. But being intentional about doing it with each other is just as important as with the customers and clients.
Totally.
So, you were saying earlier that you realized at one point you were kind of your own worst enemy. And I love that expression because how often I have been in that role where I look back and I'm like, Maggie, you are the repeating factor here, right? It's maybe not everyone else or something that just keeps happening. It's something about me. So can you share with us a key learning moment that you've had where you realized that you were battling an old mindset or an old approach, a personality trait that wasn't working for you? What did you learn and carry forward from that experience?
Oh, okay. This one, I mean, I feel like it's, I tend to like be general anyway. So I'll try to be a little bit more specific, but at the top of the funnel, I have this habit of if I do it myself, it'll get done right the first time,
Mm-hmm.
which is not great leadership, Meg. Okay. Like you got to teach a man to fish. I know these things. Um, and so being a bottleneck in different parts of the business, especially a scaling business. And so for me, the biggest one right now that I've really been working on and will continue to probably keep working on over the next 6 months is in regards to sales and marketing. And so our company has grown really organically without a well humming kind of sales and marketing engine without other people. And so the reality of like how Bridget sells and creates relationships and then gains clients is not scalable. It's not repeatable. We literally like Bridget's a growth strategist. I am, but like in areas around people and operations are my sweet spot. Sales and marketing, I still scale and grow that, but I've realized I hit a ceiling because I'm only one person.
Mm-hmm.
And your sales and marketing strategies at a certain size of company really do have to evolve into a
Mm-hmm.
whole team. You've
Yeah.
got your inbound, your outbound, client success, and all of these
Mm-hmm.
facets that should not be run not just by one person, but honestly, not even really by one team. And so that mentality, I guess, around like it's just easier if I do it myself
Mm-hmm.
is something I've always had to battle.
Yeah.
I'm an oldest daughter, truly, parentified, know these things, right? And figuring out how to make sure that, you know, how we say, like, do as I say, not as I do, right? So I know that as I do is not the best way. And so now it's like for myself, like, do as others tell you, Bridget, not as you think you should do,
Mm-hmm.
and moving that needle and really bringing people around to do it differently and do it better,
Mm-hmm.
um, and really relinquish parts that are outside of my genius.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, it's interesting. I had a very similar difficult transition of really letting go of things and truly delegating and empowering other people. Because you always think that you're going to do it the best, right? It's actually like it's all ego that was driving me in those situations where I was like, I want it done perfectly, so that will have to be me doing it. Like, just think about the essence of that statement, right?
Totally. Totally.
So,
And the fascinating thing though is that I know that I don't even do it perfectly. It's more
yeah.
so like it's the aspect of like because I'm so high velocity, right? I want it done a certain way
Hmm.
and I want it done quickly. And so
Hmm.
to slow down to teach someone to do certain parts,
Hmm.
knowing that they're going to do it differently, it's more about like the pain of that change, which is so ridiculous as someone who's like, oh, I thrive in change. Um, but like noticing the areas where like, oh no, actually, like that is kind of painful for you. And
Yeah.
how do you just manage like myself through it kind of thing.
Yep.
And also, it's so funny. I was talking to my husband maybe like a week ago where I was like going and I was feeling a certain way about some stuff. And I was just like, I'm trying to check my ego. Like, I'm trying to meter that, is it actually important or
Mhm.
is it actually something that I like should feel this way about? Or
Mhm.
is it my ego that's making me feel that way?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. And it's, anytime that you're trying to control something, you are all up in your ego. I've
Totally.
learned that the hard way too, right? It's like I have to do this. This is me. I need control, or it's going to go horrible, or it just won't be great. Like, let it go. It's
Let it
yes,
go.
yeah. I've found that most people are essentially just in a battle with their own ego and trying to figure out what is ego and what is truly me and my higher self. And there's a lot of work to be done there. I'm still working on that. So.
Same. Same.
So speaking of all the growth that we have both done, looking at kind of this next era for you as a company and you at the helm of this company and what's demanded of you, what are your next areas of growth so that you can be fulfilled, but also have the right kind of influence over this team that they need from you, considering where the company's at?
Yeah, I think we've got a lot of really great leaders in place in different areas, but it's all very, very new. And so making sure that we continue to have the right pulse checks.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yep.
and what information do I truly need? And so, are you familiar with the RACI format?
I've
So,
heard
if
of it.
you're
I've never used it, but yeah, yeah,
so super helpful. You're responsible, accountable, consulted, or informed.
right.
And the high level things, right? Like I'm responsible and accountable to the company culture. But there's a lot of like execution kind of day-to-day stuff that I maybe used to be accountable to, but I really just need to be consulted and informed. And
Exactly.
then having that also trickle down through the rest of the team.
Hmm.
And I've gone through multiple iterations of this over time because the team has evolved, the company has grown. And so I think that the big next step for me is figuring out where do I truly need to spend my time, energy, and brain space,
Hmm.
and the level of autonomy within a certain range to give the different leaders to make a decision without consulting me, I think is a
Yes.
really good one.
Yeah.
And that's the next phase of um, autonomy to them,
Hmm.
right? Like
Yeah.
how can I make sure that I've maybe given enough instruction, enough information,
Hmm.
enough vision
Hmm.
that I feel comfortable and confident that they really understand it so that
Hmm.
I don't feel the need to be consulted or
Yep.
informed. And also so that and that margin of error, I think. Not error, but getting to a point when you give that there's
Hmm.
a feedback loop
Hmm.
so that I can be like, hey, you did that really great. Here's the 10% thing I would have done differently. So you know
Hmm.
for next time, because being able to adjust and make a 2 to 10%, right?
Hmm.
Um, as you learn and grow and scale together is
Yeah.
important, but it also allows you to keep moving with
Yeah.
velocity.
Exactly. And people need that autonomy to stay energized and motivated. And also, you want to give them enough wiggle room to make those little mistakes and growing pains, but not so much that everyone falls off a cliff. And so,
Right.
you've got to have a lot of discernment when you're empowering people and developing them and giving them more autonomy about how to do that masterfully, so that again, you're setting everyone up for success, and that the level of authority that they have is clear. That's kind of I speak in terms of your level of authority or autonomy with different tasks. And is this an act and report? Or do you need to consult with me first? Or do you not even need to report back to me?
Yeah.
Right. And so I used to feel like, isn't that controlling to tell someone what level of authority and autonomy they have? And I realized, no, 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 that's like one of the most empowering, supportive things you can do is make sure that we're both clear about where you're at and where I want you to be and what it's going to take to get you there in a way that is secure and you're supported by me in the right ways. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a lot to learn in there. I feel like every leader makes mistakes both in both directions on this of giving too much autonomy too soon or not enough or doing it too late. And how often are we ever in that perfect sweet spot?
Well, and it changes, right? So as you grow and you're in a high growth company, what worked 6 months ago maybe isn't what
Yeah.
works today. And so making sure you're continually having the pulse check on that, which I think is one of the things that falls to the wayside when you're moving really quickly.
Yeah.
It's like, well, don't we just know, right? And instead of taking the time to have the conversation or document, which goes back to the gotta slow down to speed up.
Yeah. Yeah. And we don't like that.
No, no. Well, mainly because I think it can be uncomfortable when you have to have a conversation if you're misaligned, right? And the reality is there's that thought process of misalignment being negative for some reason. And so
Mhm.
really for me at least fighting against the thought of like, no, like this is actually an opportunity for us to connect
Mhm.
and continue hitting the
Absolutely.
gas pedal rather than it having to be contentious friction. There's a difference
Exactly.
between friction and contentious friction. So
Exactly. And are we hitting friction? Yeah, that's going to happen every day, right?
as we
And
should.
so and friction is good. It means that we are in a struggle, we have different perspectives, we're sharing them, we're collaborating. There's going to be friction and conflict, and that's healthy for a company. But yeah, that's also giving and receiving that feedback while we're moving quickly can be really threatening to people. Like, people don't want to be judged. They don't want you to see them as bad or incapable. And so approaching it from a place of this is good conflict, right? And I'm here to just realign. You're great. You're awesome. Um, that makes all the difference in the world in
Yeah.
those situations. So I am curious too. I've asked you about the past and currently what you're working on. But let's look to the future for a second, because y'all are growing so quickly, and you're developing this leadership team around you. What do you see as that next place that you want you and your leadership team to be at? Are there specific behaviors? Is there a milestone where you're like, yes, we're going to be doing great when things are going like this? Do you have a vision for where you feel like you and the leadership need to be ready for the next 5 years?
Yeah, I think because we are new, like we just had a controller onboarded on Monday
Mm-hmm.
last week. So we're still kind of like assembling the team.
Yeah.
And so we just need time, right? Some of these things just need time. You can have best laid plans and all the things. So we need some time, I would say, over the next like 2 months. And then once we're in that rhythm of being able to know the information that's needed between all departments,
Mm-hmm.
and then we're reporting because we're very data driven in a lot of our decisions
Mm-hmm.
and making sure that we are affecting efficiency. So, one of the big things over the next year is looking at different parts of the process and where can automations come in, where can we be more efficient with our human capital time, all of the different pieces that are needed across departments. If the team as a whole is meeting on our weekly basis and information sharing is happening very smoothly, and then we can move with speed towards decisions. Once we get there, which will probably take another like 2 or 3 months, and then we can start to feel that. I think that's going to be the jet fuel that really
Nice.
sets us on a different trajectory.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you're describing that storming, norming, performing phase. When you have new people come in, there's going to be that storming sense on a team of, wait, now who does what? Where are the
Yeah.
lines of accountability? How can I get to know and trust this person? And that's just it's just going to take some time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my last question for you, Bridget, is if I could give you a time machine, bless you. If I could give you a time machine and send you back 10 to 15 years ago to talk to the younger Bridget, what advice would you give yourself?
Ooh, 10 to 15 years ago.
Assuming you would listen to yourself, which I don't know if either one of us would listen to our future selves.
Honestly, it's like how long do I have with my 10 to 15 years ago self? I would say spend time. Something I'm realized and as like the work that I'm doing right now is that I am built to put others first. And I wish I had more tools in my toolbox back then to sit with myself and understand like what do I want, what do I need,
Mhm.
because I think that would have contributed to a lot of things being different maybe today.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't change any of where I am today because, I love where it is. But I think I was mainly an only child growing up, and I have three daughters. And so the number one most important thing in anything that I do is the legacy of my kids. And so just having more of that emotional intelligence or that awareness sooner, I think would set me up to be the best that I can be, not only as a leader in my profession, but also my personal life, and
Yeah.
set me up to be the best wife and mother that I can be.
Mhm.
So it's still a work in progress. But I think I struggle a little bit more on my personal side than I do my professional side because it's a lot easier for me as a leader in an organization
Mhm.
to kind of like think about putting other people first and like leading with that aspect. For the people, for the company, for the clients. And on the personal side, I've really got to like fill my cup first to be the best. And that's true. It's true in both places. But
Mhm.
um, I think I lack doing it better on the personal side than I do on the professional side.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of people are with you on that, that when we're at work, we're a little more intentional about how we're showing up. And then in our personal life is where we have a little bit more of those struggles of self-management and relationships and not showing up in the best way. But that's where our opportunity for growth is. I know for me as a parent, that's as someone who wants to be fast paced, we're innately a little impatient, and that is hard as a parent.
Yeah. Yeah. Making sure it's like, the dividends of the little things are what really matters, right? Like the big things are great and will develop core memories. Um, but habits and daily
Mhm.
um, affirmations and all of that and make make up their childhood.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's what all the research says too. For all those parents out there who are in executive roles like us, it's the little moments and being there for them and the little things that they're going to remember and that they're basing their relationship with you on is the little things. So,
I mean, my degree's in early childhood
yeah.
education. You know how we all are like, we thought we'd be like such a good parent before you became a parent. It's like I was such a good day camp director. I ran like groups and camps and crafts and activities with 250 kids. I only have three. What am I doing?
Well, also give yourself a little credit that you have three kids and you're a CEO of a growing company. That is not a small feat. And we got to have a lot of grace for ourselves. But I love that you would go back and tell yourself, be more reflective, figure out what's important to you and where to let go and start to develop those EQ skills earlier. I think we would
Definitely.
both be where we're at. It just could have been a heck of a lot easier.
Yeah, maybe a little less painful along the way.
Yeah, a little less drama, a little less skeletons in my wake. Yeah.
That the whole like stealing French fries thing. Like, I'd like to not be a thief. I'm gonna work on like not stealing the French fries.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, let's just sprinkle French fries on
Yeah,
people.
I would be the stork, the French fry stork.
There you go. There you go. Well, Bridget, thank you so much for all the really authentic insights that you gave us. This was a lot of fun. Thank you for being with me.
Thanks for having me.